Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpeuro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go! 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 Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! Yeah, this is it. Ready for it? Yeah, this is it. Go! Go! Yeah, this is it. Go! Let's go! This is it.
The year 2020 has been chaotic and confusing. Life felt like it halted for several months in the spring and summer. But with new guidelines, racing returned when the summer months came. But while the world was on hold, SRO America did not stop racing. GT Rivals introduced esports to the world like never before, pitting real drivers against sim racers in 60-minute sprint races at tracks all over the digital world in Assetto Corsa Competizione. When the checkered flag fell on the season, SRO America is ready for another season of racing, the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. GT3 and GT4 cars will run together in multi-class action at the Nurburgring for the first several rounds of racing. Welcome to SRO America. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine. We've got 60 minutes of action with GT3 and GT4 cars ready for you this afternoon. Ryan, welcome. GT Rivals in the spring was a blast. I cannot wait to get back at it this season.
Kyle, you said it. It was so much fun to experience sim racing SRO style back in the spring, and really excited to be a part of this again. You highlighted some of the tweaks to the format that we have in store for this second season of the SRO America Esports Championship, and really can't wait to get started here. It's a beautiful venue for us at the Nurburgring, and it should be a lot of fun, especially with the mixed class element, GT3 and GT4, alongside one another for the first time in this series.
We've got some great new partners with us. FCP Euro is with us this season. So is Liqui Corteco, Asus, Republic of Gamers, and Tough Gaming, Fanatec, and AWS. The Esports Championship runs in the AWS cloud. CrowdStrike is back with us, and so is Pirelli, Rebellion, the official timekeeper of SRO America, and Total. We've got some giveaways for you, so if you head to the GT World Challenge America social channels on Twitter, Facebook, or wherever else, you can find them on social media. There are season-long giveaways from Asus ROG, Fanatec, and FCP Euro, and they include a sim rig with custom Asus ROG desktop, an Asus ROG monitor, Fanatec wheelbase, wheel pedals, and more. So if you're interested in some sim racing equipment, check out the GT World Challenge America social media channels. Well, qualifying is underway, and some differences this season, Ryan. We've got GT4 cars as well as GT3, and it's multi-class racing this time around.
Well, that's such a big part of sports car racing around the world, and we see it in various real-world SRO championships as well. In SRO America, you don't see that a whole lot outside of special events like we saw at the Indianapolis 8 Hours this year, which was a part of the Intercontinental GT Challenge powered by Pirelli. Usually, you have the GT3 America cars running on their own and GT4 America running in separate series, but here, we're going to have them mixing, playing together, hopefully playing nice. And one of the fun elements of it, too, is just another way to reach out to that wonderful sim racing community that just continues to grow. The GT4 class provided an opportunity for some of the best sim racers out there to qualify their way into this race, racing with some of the best real-world drivers from SRO America, and it should make for a dynamic afternoon of racing.
Absolutely. Riding on board now with Keith Briscoe in these GT4 cars, and the differences between GT3 and GT4, Ryan, well, visually, it just looks like they're missing aero, but fundamentally, they are very different race cars, lower power. Some of these cars are running close to basically street car configuration. Others are purpose-built for the action. On the left-hand side of your screen is the GT4 ticker, and you'll have to follow along to make sure that you're following the right battles, because GT3 and GT4 have separate tickers. We'll keep you updated on all that information, but Keith Briscoe right now 1.9 seconds off the best time, driven by Cavillon in the 56 car at the top of the board, a 2:03.591, his best time so far. So GT4 qualifies first, then GT3, Ryan. So going to be an action-packed qualifying session even before the racing starts.
That's right, and so you know, just the best way to keep track of which class you're looking at on the ticker, it's that number plate. So the color behind the numbers, right now you're just seeing the red, and that does signify our GT4 class. When we get the GT3 cars on track, there'll be a combination of white and silver number backgrounds differentiating between the real-world drivers and the invited sim racing drivers that are participating on the GT3 side of things. So that's what you're looking for, to try and keep it straight what you're looking at. And to your point, you look at a GT4 car and it certainly looks like a race car, just a lot less sophisticated than the GT3 cars they'll be sharing the track with. What does that mean? Like you said, less aero, a little bit less horsepower, but also less sophistication with things like ABS and traction control. In fact, in the case of the Maserati that we might be seeing at one point or another during the course of the season, that car does not have the ABS or traction control at all. So that's one of the older GT4 cars out there. They're becoming increasingly more sophisticated, definitely high technology, no doubt about that, but a far cry from their more sophisticated cousins in the GT3 side as we take a look at one of those Maseratis right here.
That's JT Tammy, who I remember last season ran extraordinarily well. And it's really good to see JT back, along with a bunch of Champion Motorsports drivers. And, of course, Champion Motorsports, the league that's sort of taking this Esports Championship under their wing and providing some of the technical assistance, getting everything set up. They've done an amazing job of a handful of drivers in the field. But this is a really cool opportunity for these drivers to be sharing sessions with some of the world's premier drivers. And we look down the order, and Toby Grohovic is here today. He is in a GT3 category car and won't be directly competing against some of these sim racers, but he ran an entire season in TC America in the TC category, and it was cool to see him at the racetrack. And I was actually grateful enough to be able to go to, or privileged enough to go to Road America, Circuit of the Americas, as well as Sonoma and Indianapolis, and meet some of these drivers, and they're all amazing folks, amazing people. Another driver that's here in GT3, Sally McNulty, and I know her from another series that runs here in America, but she's here as well. but there's a lot of really cool drivers that are going to be racing up against some of the best sim racers in the business.
That's right, and then you have the mix of the sim pros and the real pros, and that really is encapsulated in the resume of Brian Highcutter, who was so strong in GT Rivals. If you go back to the spring, the first season of the SRO America Esports Championship, he's a guy who got his career started in real car racing via sim racing, won some competitions that provided him an opportunity to step into real race cars, competed all around the world, including at some of the most famous endurance sports car races anywhere out there. And so it's always fun to see that come together. You have such an interesting mix of drivers here from a lot of different backgrounds. We're going to be seeing drivers with drifting backgrounds. We've got some stunt drivers in the field as well who do that professionally. Then you have the real world racers and guys like Brian Highcutter and others that have such a background in sim racing and were able to turn that into a career road racing professionally. And I think that mix makes this really fascinating and should make for a lot of fun, an interesting dynamic throughout the course of our season.
For sure, and qualifying continues here again. First 10 minutes are for the GT4 category cars. The final 10 minutes will be for the GT3 spec cars. We will get rolling for a 60-minute race not too long from now. And let's talk a little bit about the racetrack we're at, the Nurburgring here, Ryan. This is a racetrack that is an FIA Grade 1 circuit that has been around for a little while now, but it's just right next to the Nordschleife, one of the oldest racetracks in the world, and it's spectacular in its own right, but we'll be racing on the Grand Prix circuit today.
That's right, the Grand Prix circuit with roots going back to 1984. It's been modified since 1984, but basically the circuit that we're going to be running on here today dates back to the mid-'80s, but as you alluded to, the Nurburgring with the Nordschleife, there's also a southern loop as well that goes back a long, long ways. But you really can trace the history of motorsports in Germany back to this region, back to 1907. There were races held in the Eifel region of Germany that involved racing on public roads, and that went on for quite some time before the idea came to build a permanent circuit similar to what the Italians had already built at Monza and with their Targa Florio track. And that's really what the genesis of the Nürburgring is. The original Nürburgring circuit was proposed first back in 1925, completed in 1927. Started off with a motorcycle race the first day. The second day, the cars came out and won. Rudy Caracciola was one of the first winners on this track in cars in the 5,000cc category. And Rudy, if it's a name you don't know, was one of the great pre-World War II Grand Prix drivers before there was a Formula One World Championship. So there's such history with this track. It's evolved over the years. The desire to create a more safe environment for racing, especially for single-seaters and for Formula One, is what led to this Grand Prix circuit that we see here. But so much history, whether you're talking about the Nordschleife or the Grand Prix Strecke, which is what we'll be racing on today.
And I think one of the big topics of discussion every time you come to the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit is turn one is basically at 180-degree hairpin. We've got, 50-something cars, 44 cars lining up to start this race. And while there'll be a bit of a split start, Ryan, that turn one is always chaos and confusion. We're going to see 3, maybe 4 wide heading down there. So I think a lot of drivers' goal is just to get down there and come out the other side, at least to start this race. Then you can figure out the other 59 and a half minutes after you do that successfully.
No, it's definitely the first step. Once you get out of qualifying, immediately the first thoughts go to turn one, lap one, the Haughaken, that first corner on this circuit. It is daunting because it is wide, it is inviting, but it tightens up, that's for sure. And so you said it, it's easy for you to end up in a 4-wide, 5-wide situation going into that corner. Frankly, I think cooler heads are going to prevail, and whoever gets through that corner is going to have a chance to win this race. And I suspect several of our contenders are not going to be so fortunate, having watched plenty of real-world racing as well as sim racing here at this track. So often, so much is dictated by the opening corner because of its dimensions.
And here's Josh Staffen heading down the front straightaway. Won a couple races last season into the braking zone. And find the apex, the track drops away from you here. track back out and sweep into turn number 2. And we'll take a look at a track map a little bit later before we take the green flag so everyone can really get a good idea of how twisty this racetrack is and how fast and flowing the backside of the track is. The first half is such slow rolling. There's a lot of mechanical grip. Then you get into the backside of the track, right? It's all high-speed aerodynamics, and that track is sticking to the ground with the help of basically airplane wings turned upside down and mounted to the rear bumper.
That's exactly right, especially for the GT3 cars. They are so aero-dependent. They make a ton of downforce and consequently carry a lot of speed through some of the high-speed sections of this circuit. But you get to the slower portions, the beginning of the lap, like you said, and the GT3 and GT4 cars aren't going to be that much different in total pace, which I think is going to make it really fascinating to watch how the leaders make their way through out-of-class traffic. That's going to be a big part of the racing here this season that we didn't have the first time. Yes, we had drivers lapping other drivers, but those were effectively in the same cars, same classification of cars with GT3 versus GT4. The performance window is much different here when you have GT3 and GT4 sharing the track for the same time, and the patience that it takes negotiating out-of-class traffic, that's going to be at a premium and just adds to the requirements for success in an event like this. That toolbox got a little bit bigger. The drivers who have that bigger toolbox, they're the ones that are going to succeed.
Matthew Marlowe for CMS is working his way around the racetrack right now, and I have to say, these guys, some of them had custom liveries for this event, and have a look at this. FCP Euro on the nose of this car, one of our sponsors for this championship. These liveries are so well done, and I think kind of making your personal mark is a really unique thing. And I think all these Champion Motorsports cars have a similar livery, just with tweaked colors, and looks really sharp out there, Ryan. And that's kind of par for the course than anything with SRO America tagged on it.
Well, we saw that increasingly throughout the GT Rivals season, more and more teams putting their custom liveries on their cars and really creating a dynamic grid of race cars. And we picked up right where we left off and maybe took a couple big steps forward. It's awesome to see. You're right, this is a great looking car. Matthew Marlowe, a Californian, a lot of ACC experience. This is his sim of choice. He's in his day job a weather and environmental scientist, and it's really interesting to see, especially with some of the sim racers in the field, what they do in the day job, and you wonder if some of that carries over, and certainly some of the analytical skills that he would have to possess to do what he does with his day job, you would have to believe would help. Doing a nice job so far here in the top 10 as we just get going with GT3 qualifying. Doing a very good job, in fact, the second fastest with that silver backing plate. This, though, is going to be the guy to watch in this Nissan. Brian Heitkotter, who I talked about, he was the champion and had to win in the winner-take-all race, basically, at Kyalami to close out GT Rivals, and got a really good challenge from David Perro. They had a great duel in the second half of that season, but his consistency was really the key, not just the pace, which was always there, but he seemed just inch perfect, lap after lap, week after week, did not make the crucial mistakes that took him out of championship contention. And again, he's going to have an additional challenge here this time with the mixed class nature of the racing, but without a doubt, if you're looking for a favorite right off the bat, this is your guy.
Yeah, and again, for Chris Forsberg racing in that number 5 car, he will always be a threat in this Nissan GTR GT3. Looking down the order a little bit more, we talked about Toby Grahovic. Nelson Mason is back this time in the Audi, and he was a force to be reckoned with quite a bit in the midseason last year, or last, it almost feels like a year ago, in the spring in GT Rivals, and right now 17th in qualifying, and I think if he could get up inside the top 10, he would be poised to continue the success that he had earlier this year.
He really was a revelation. He joined the championship late, but consistently was running in the top 10, had some really good results. This is a driver with extensive experience racing in Europe, most likely on this circuit, actually. I should have gone back and taken a look at his resume in a little bit greater detail, but he did a lot of open-wheel racing in Europe as he was coming up. Even though he is Canadian, really hasn't done much racing in North America over the years. I know he had some aspirations to join the SRO America grid in some capacity this year, and it obviously was a complicated year to make any kind of racing deal happen, so unfortunately we didn't have a chance to see him, but I believe those aspirations still remain. So great to see Nelson back racing with us here in the second season, and this Audi combined with this Canadian driver, it turned into a pretty potent combination the first time around. And I think if you're looking for maybe a dark horse to break through, this might be one based on the pace we saw from him in the second half of the GT Rivals season.
At the top of the board right now in GT3, it's Philippe Simard in the number 42. He's got a 153.232. That's a full 2/10 better than the second place driver, the number 96. Philippe Simard in this Ferrari, we saw Kessel take the Ferrari to nearly the top step in the last couple races of last season. So I'm interested to watch the differences in the cars as well. It's something that Assetto Corsa Competizione models is the differences between the cars. And while they're all BOP to their real life counterparts, there's still some advantages and disadvantages to each car, and it all kind of evens out all across the schedule, and it's really fun to see which cars are dominant, which drivers can utilize their car.
Yeah, as my SRO America broadcast partner Calvin Fish likes to say, it's horses for courses. Some tracks are going to suit different cars more than others, and over the course of the season you hope it kind of balances out and you take advantage of your opportunities when they present itself. But even each individual weekend, you can almost view the same level of variation in microcosm, because different parts of the track are going to benefit different cars as well. We talked about the early part of the lap here at the Nurburgring being slower and less dependent on downforce, so there are certain cars that are going to see that to their benefit, whereas maybe some other cars are going to be stronger in sections of the track like we're seeing right here that are a bit more on the high speed side of things. So it's really fun to keep an eye on that. Like you mentioned, the balance of performance, so crucial in sports car racing, especially in GT3 racing, and the SRO for years now has been a leader in finding a way to balance very disparate platforms and create close competitive racing. And as we've seen so far through GT Rivals, it seemed like week in and week out you had a nice variety of different cars that were able to contend for a win. Everything from a Bentley like we're seeing on the screen right there to the live Ferrari. I mean, you couldn't talk about more different cars as Drake Burgoon goes for an interesting ride. And nevertheless, they're able to come up with basically identical lap times when driven well.
A couple cars going a little off-roading there. Cody Blanton finishing up his laps here as the qualifying session has essentially completed. And if we have a look here at the timetable, our pole sitter, again, Philippe Simard in the number 42 atop the standings with a 153.049. So he did improve, as did the number 96. He jumps up to a 153.184, 0.135 back from the top driver. Then Cody Blanton in third, Troy Barman in fourth, and Hamza Gulzar in fifth, Ryan. But really tight in GT3, and I'm really excited for this category as well as GT4.
Yeah, that was a nice lap from Michael Kadacciolu, who ends up there in that second spot, really strong in that middle sector, and that's where, again, we can compare and contrast the different cars, but at least based on the limited running we saw right there in qualifying, the Mercedes strong there in the middle. An interesting mix there in our top 10 between the invited sim drivers as well as some of the professionals, and I think one of the storylines that was fun to watch during GT Rivals was how early on the sim racers seemed to have an edge, but over the course of the season that started to shift, and we saw the pro racers get a bit more comfortable with Assetto Corsa Competizione, and they showed their pace as the season progressed. And looking down the list to find the first GT4 drivers, and Ryan, you're going to have to help me with some of the names here today. The number 56 with a 203.339, I believe, is our fastest GT4 driver. And Ludovic Daust in second, Simon Fisher in third. And Tadas Litkes in fourth place in the number 727. Caleb John Lavender in fifth in the 999. And so, again, GT3, GT4, two different classes for 60 minutes. The multi-class interaction is going to be a challenge for everybody, especially with 44 drivers about to take the green here. Ryan, your final thoughts on qualifying before we take a short break before the race? Well, it was a good, clean session. It seemed like didn't see cars impeding one another, and that's great because this is going to be a busy, busy race. Lots of cars taking part in this. There's not going to be much time when you're not in traffic, especially with the two classes sharing the track simultaneously. So good to see there. Hopefully that bodes well for what we're about to see, but I think right now everyone focusing their attention on how do you get through that first turn the first time when we go green. Green flag in just a few minutes. We'll be back in just a few. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpeuro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
The FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is about to begin from the Nurburgring, the first round of several in the 2020 fall season. You're watching SRO America's coverage of FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. My name's Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine for a 60-minute multi-class racing event at the Nurburgring. We're back live and about ready to roll off. We've done qualifying, Ryan, and we're about 2 minutes away from getting our warm-up lap underway. But again, the conditions are perfect. It's sunny, no chance of rain in the virtual world today. We get to control those conditions, which I'm sure you would like to do in the real world sometimes. But digital racing about to get back underway for a second season.
Yeah, that's right. Can't wait to see what we have in store for us here today. So excited about the addition of GT4. First of all, just to Assetto Corsa Competizione, really, it does a nice job highlighting one of the great growth classes under the SRO umbrella right now. You look around the world and GT4 is taking off, so great to see that represented here in the simulation alongside the banner class, if you will, of the SRO, which is GT3. It should be a ton of fun to watch these different cars interact on track together. And I love this Nürburgring Grand Prix track. Everyone likes to talk about the Nordschleife, and it is amazing, but there is something special about this track as well. It's fast and flowing in certain sections, tests your brakes and mechanical grip in others. It's a real challenge for all involved, and should be a perfect setting to get our season started.
Well, speaking of the racetrack, let's have a look here at the track map to get an idea of where we are racing here today. Of course, this is the Nürburgring. This is the Grand Prix layout. It all begins with a run down the hill towards the Castrol S. That is going to be turn number 1, the right-hander, and then swinging back to the left through turn number 2. Back to the left again for turn number 3, a very tight mechanical section. I call it the arena section, as you're kind of dragging the front tires in these slow, flat corners. Then the run down to the Ford curve. That'll be a left-hander, and then you'll swing back to the right, tall curbs on either side before you run down to the Dunlop curve at the far end of the racetrack. Once you're there, you'll downshift into probably second or third gear and thunder up out towards the RTL curve, as well as the Schumacher S. That's one of the most famous corners in racing, and we'll thunder through that before RTL curve, then bit curve, then the run down to turn number 12 and the NGK chicane, which will do a quick left-right jog before Coca-Cola curve and come back on the front straightaway to complete a lap. Ryan, it happens very quickly. It takes about 1 minute and 50-something seconds for the GT3 cars, just about 2 minutes for the GT4 cars, but it is like a roller coaster around here, and conveniently, they've got a roller coaster at the end of the front straightaway to ride and have a look at. I'm not sure if that's operational or not, but I hope it is, and if it's not, the racetrack is a pretty good stand-in.
Yeah, that's right. It definitely is. You have so much in the way of elevation change, the twists, the turns, lots of different types of corners that will challenge these drivers. It's also a challenge from the setup perspective. And keep in mind, that is something that these drivers have been trying to work on all throughout the build-up to this event, trying to hone that setup, get them what they need, not just for one fast lap in qualifying, but they need to make this last over the hour-long run as well, and that's something that, as we saw back in GT Rivals in Season 1, just because you're fast over one lap doesn't mean you're poised to make the whole race run at the kind of pace that you're looking for. So definitely one of the challenging aspects of motorsports, but also a racetrack like this that requires so many different demands from car and driver alike.
Well, about 6:05 p.m. in the sim right now. I'm in the Central Time Zone, about 2:40 for me, 3:40 for those on the East Coast of the United States. But SRO America's next Esports Championship is about to get underway. We're going to have a pace lap here, and with 44 cars thundering down towards turn number 1, Ryan. Again, the virtual world, you've got some constraints that you don't necessarily have in the real world. The real world runs at infinite frames per second. We got almost 50 cars out here. We'll drag that, my poor computer, down quite a bit, but it's going to be fun to watch as we get ready to go racing. We're still single filed out, and Philippe Samard up on the front row. Cody Blanton will be lined up behind him in third as they double up for the start. And then the GT4 field will get another green. We'll try to show you both starts before we settle in to a 60-minute multi-class race here this afternoon. You're watching the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Again, my name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine, both from SRO America. We've got Jules and Robbie behind the scenes, kind of making sure everything runs smoothly. Thanks for all their help in getting this set up and organized. Emily Hunt as well, doing the same as we head down into the S's and get set up for our start. Doubling up here, Ryan. Your final thoughts here before we turn them loose.
I don't know who's more apprehensive, you about your computer and the frame rate, or these drivers trying to negotiate turn one for the first time. It's going to be hairy. Looking pretty good right now as far as that formation goes. Hopefully cooler heads will prevail and we can get through cleanly and have a nice clean start to this race.
Looking forward to getting this one underway. 60 minutes of action, 1 hour long. It's going to feel like 20 minutes to the drivers, and it might feel like 10 hours for those that are having to deal with traffic as we double up and head towards the final couple corners on the Nurburgring. A lot of Mercedes AMG GT3s up at the front, a Ferrari 488 leading the field, Bentley and Acura NSX GT3 and more. One more corner. And the FCP Euro drivers starting a little bit towards the back. They'll be coming forward. So will Josh Staffen, past winner in GT Rivals back in the spring. Double file through the chicane. And now down to about 30 to 40 miles an hour here, Ryan, before we turn them loose. Final corner on the pace lap. Down to 30 miles an hour. First gear, maybe second for the start. Find the gear that's torqueous for you. The run down to the first corner begins. The FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship in just 1 moment will turn green. To the start-finish line, 44 drivers. Here we go. Green flag flies, and we're racing in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. 3 wide as we head down to turn 1. The number 9 of Cody Blanton flanked on both sides. The 22 on the outside in the Acura. Down to turn number 1. 3 wide, 4 wide as we get to the first corner.
And so much for cooler heads prevailing, although it seems pretty clean here at the front of the field at least. That's the good news, but plenty of aggression here early. Not a great start there for the 9, like you said. Dropped back quite a bit. But you can't worry too much about that here early on. Just got to focus forward. Still a long race. A lot of racing left to go.
Philippe Samard got kind of nudged out of the way there just a moment ago, but he's dropped way back. He was the pole sitter for this race. He has fallen back and has a lot of work left to do. Meanwhile, in the background, there is another race happening. It's the GT4 battle. They've already taken the green flag, and their pole sitter has also has drivers to deal with right behind him. I believe that's the number 220 of Ludovic Daust, and they're battling in the Porsches right now at the top of the field.
Yeah, that's right. That's actually Anor Cavallon, who was the pole sitter there, and she has done a really nice job qualifying for this first of all, and then getting a clean start. You can see the GT4 cars already on the back of the GT3 field, and we have an accident up ahead that the GT4 field is going to have to negotiate.
I believe that was the 24 car that was the one we saw turned around. And if I can find it on the timing and scoring, a long list of drivers to look down, but looks like everyone's gotten back rolling. We won't go back and take a look at the replay just because of how early in the race it is. Big slide for the 72 car. And they'll collect it and continue. So the early lap dramas, I believe, are relatively sorted. Out up front, though, the number 96.
Well, that was a close call a moment ago for Joseph Kostovich from Chicago, Illinois. Had that spin right in front of him and was able to get through. So breathing a sigh of relief, I'm sure. But how about this start here? Michael Kundacioglu, great lap in qualifying, just about a tenth or two off of the pole, and was able to get through that first lap pretty clean. Now finds himself with some room to work with, a little bit of breathing room here. About the only driver on track that can say that. Look how fierce this is a little bit further back.
There's Drake Burgoon, Dirk Grunfeld behind him in the 136, Matthew Santiago in the number 216. He's 12th overall in a Bentley. He's back there in the blue and green one. Then behind them, the Lamborghini of Matthew Marlowe in 13th place, climbing up over the curbs 3 minutes in a great battle for what is 10th place right now.
Yeah, got our eyes on this one closely. Burgoon right here in 10th, looking back to Dirk Grunfeld back in the 11th spot. He's one who was a veteran of our first series back in the GT Rivals days in the spring. And then Santiago a little bit further back as well, doing a great job staying right in that toe. That's a big part of this here. You want to get in that draft as best as you can, but you do start to lose some of that downforce if you're following too closely through the high-speed sections, and so that is the compromise that you make as well.
Carl Whitmer right in front of Grunwald right now. Big slide over the curbs, and Grunwald's around in the Porsche, and he'll find his way to the tire barrier, and from 11th place, finds himself spun, caution flag out in that sector. He'll get back rolling, but a costly mistake for Grunwald's bright orange Porsche.
That really is a shame. Had a nice run going there in the early stages and just seemed to maybe catch a bit too much of that curb possibly, and that's all it takes. It's really a fine line that you're walking every single lap, and especially early on, maybe tire temp's not quite up where you'd like him to be operationally, and he paid the price there, that's for sure. Didn't look like too hard of contact, so hopefully he's able to recover.
Hamza Golzar in the number 14 car in a Mercedes comes across the line, third place. Lucas Mueller behind him in the 55. Then Philippe Samard, who is the pole sitter in GT3, still inside the top 5, but has work to do to get back out front. Badacciolu is 1.5 seconds clear of Barman, Troy Barman in the 191. So that battle has fizzled for now, but the battle for third behind him, heating up with Samard, trying to run them both down.
So confusingly enough, we have 2 Lucas Muellers, I believe, on the entry list. At least there were 2 that were planning on taking part at one point or another, and their teammates as well for the Haupt Racing team, which is the sim arm of a real-world GT World Challenge Europe powered by AWS team. So we'll have to keep an eye on them. This is Lucas with the K. We also have Lucas with a C that will be with us at least at one point or another, so we'll have to keep an eye. There he is, Lucas Mueller with the C as well. So we've got a couple different Lucas Muellers now running both in the top 6 to really throw a wrench into things for us trying to keep things straight.
It's going to be confusing for sure. I think we'll check back a little bit deeper in the field. A couple drivers we wanted to keep our eye on earlier. Brian Heitkotter in 14th right now in GT3, behind Chris Bruno, ahead of Kurt Whitmer, one of the other Whitmers, in the number 26. Kurt, I believe, is in a BMW for this round as we ride on board with Heitkotter.
Yeah, so the Whitmer family is so successful out of Canada, out of the Montreal area, racing primarily touring cars, although Kuno Whitmer has probably had the most success in GT cars. He's been a factory driver for BMW in the past. He's held that role for McLaren here more recently, and a couple other major programs, including a Dodge Viper program if you go back a little ways. But the brothers, very successful. Carl and Kurt and Nick all have raced in the SRO America paddock at one point or another. There's a lot of racing in the family as well. There's also a lot of passion for hockey in the family. As we look at Kurt Whitmer right here, being Canadians, as you would expect, there is that passion for hockey, and several of the Whitmers have actually played it at either a semi-professional or professional level. But racing also a big part of the family. That's what they're known for. And here comes Kurt on the attack right now, trying to find a way by Jason Alexandridis, who is one of the real-world drivers with some SRO America experience to his name.
Good battle here for what is 19th in GT3 up the inside for turn number 3. And Alexandridis will have to leave him some room, and through goes Kurt Whitmer to take that spot away. We should jump back a little bit and check out our GT4 field. There it is right now with Honor Cavillon out front. We'll look a little bit deeper, find Simon Fisher with Caleb John Lavender. This is a battle for, I believe, third in class.
Simon Fisher, he runs the Canadian division of a software company. He's also an avid triathlete, but does a lot of racing with the Champion Motorsports Group. That, as we talked about, has done a lot of the background work to make sure that these championships run, whether we're talking about GT Rivals or here with the second season. So a big thanks to them once again for all that they've contributed. And really an avid sim racer, loving his time being part of this championship, as he's got some GT3 cars, I think, working their way through.
And I believe that's the 810 of Jacob Rude who's gone through. Again, Fisher third in class right now. There's a battle for third that's got about 3 cars separated by second and a half or so. And the rest of the GT4 field has singled out pretty nicely for now. But I think once we start mixing in the GT3 traffic more heavily, Ryan, it's going to be a lot more chaotic than it is right now.
Well, it's a lot of give and take when you're working through out-of-class traffic, and it can be so frustrating. If you're in the slower class, if the traffic catches you at a bad time, it can put you in a compromised position. The same is true in the reverse for the GT3 cars. Sometimes you just catch traffic at a bad spot and you have to sit and wait. And the key to that is reminding yourself that these things ebb and flow and have a way of evening themselves out over the course of an hour-long race. Don't get too frustrated. Don't let it get to your head, because that's when mistakes can creep in. Good look here on board with JT Tammy driving in that Maserati. Did a great job racing in the GT3 ranks back in GT Rivals, a big part of the Champion Motorsports Group as well, and running in 6th as it stands. And trying to chase down Lucas up ahead. He's about 2 seconds behind.
And Lucas right now is all over the back of Caleb John Lavender in the number 999. He's just up the road in that Audi, and we'll ride on board the back of Caleb John Lavender's car, and you can see that BMW M4 GT4 trying to hunt him down. And again, flat sections, all mechanical grip through here. So we talked earlier, Ryan, about the differences between GT3, GT4. A lot of that is aerodynamic differences. So when we get to these slower sections, the GT3 cars don't have a huge advantage, and they're going to get stuck behind the GT4 traffic. Then when you get to the backside of the track with the faster flowing sections, that's where those GT3 cars come to life.
That's right, and also they can lean on the additional horsepower that they have to power through the extra downforce that they carry. But to your point, in those slow speed sections, not a whole lot between the two different platforms. I'd say the biggest advantage there is the more sophisticated ABS and traction control that the GT3 cars carry relative to the GT4 cars, or in the case of the Maserati GT4 car, none of those driver aids at all, because that's actually a converted single-make Cup class car that has had some pretty serious success over the last couple of years. It's certainly long in the tooth at this point. You don't see them running much anymore, but here in the States at least, Jeff Courtney ran that car with great success going back a couple of years, 2-3 years ago, won championships in the AM category at in what was then Pirelli World Challenge GTS. So that car has some speed, but these are the more sophisticated cars, and they're putting on a great battle right here. The GT4 Audi and the GT4 BMW, which was so strong in GT4 America this year, but having to be a bit patient at the moment is Lucas, because he's got a GT3 car knifing through, and that's what I'm talking about. You can't get frustrated here just because you had your run interrupted by an out-of-class car and you lost a lot of ground. There's a good chance that that same thing is going to happen to the guy that you're chasing, and that allows you to even things up in the long run.
Looking around the field in GT3, one of the drivers that we didn't mention anything about in the beginning is one of the FCP Euro drivers, Nate Vincent, who drove one of the Volkswagen TCR cars in TC America last year. They, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, they didn't run much of this season, but Nate Vincent here today in the number 72 FCP Euro car, and it looks sharp. Of course, if you don't know much about FCP Euro, they're a really neat company, Ryan, because they offer lifetime guarantees on everything that they sell, which is really cool. European car parts retailer. So really neat company and really neat drivers. Nate's a cool guy. And I believe we've got both the FCP Euro drivers here tonight. Michael Hertzen is heading down pit lane, but there he is with some fairly significant damage. I think he needs some FCP Euro car parts to fix that thing up.
Well, good thing the car parts he's got on there already have that lifetime warranty, right? that is pretty amazing. And from what he's told my fellow commentator on the real world side of things, Greg Kramer, that goes down to everything, like even brakes.
Yep.
And that's pretty remarkable, obviously, because those are a component that you use and that goes away over time. But they feel like if they can provide a real service, oh, that's a wild ride right there for Nate Vincent. But if they can provide the kind of customer service for their customers on parts like that, yeah, maybe that doesn't help the bottom line initially, but the goodwill that you engender by doing that leads to repeat business, and they've been very successful with that over the years. And both drivers are hands-on with the company as well, and frankly, that's why we didn't see them after the first round at Circuit of the Americas this year, because they, like everyone else involved with the racing, were also having to go to the office, and they couldn't take the risk of getting sick because that was going to hurt their customers ultimately, and they had to prioritize that first. But we certainly look forward to having them back in the paddock on a regular basis again soon.
And there is John Miller in the Corteco Liqui FCP Euro car for ST Racing. And John had a lot of success last season as well in GT Rivals. He's back for more, running 19th in class in GT3 at the moment.
And John Miller, a really talented driver that maybe just hasn't had the high-profile rides that he deserves based on his pace, at least here in the States. He carved out a nice career over in Europe, doing a lot of racing, I think on the Nurburgring, actually, on the Nordschleife. So this should be home for him to some degree, but has come to the States and done a really good job in the series. Had a championship last year, back in 2019. He was paired with Harry Gottsacker, and amazingly, that was his first championship ever racing in cars, and did a really good job there. Was paired with Samantha Tan in the silver class of GT4 America Sprint X this year. They ended up third in the championship and had several good runs, and he's been a big part of Samantha's improvement as a driver as well, which we can talk more about as the season goes along. Here's Brian Highcotter that we're on board with, and I've been waiting for him to make a charge, and frankly, this has taken a little longer than I expected based on how the GT Rivals series went.
Well, it's going to be tricky today, especially once we get into some traffic, but Highcotter now on the back. The tailpipes of Chris Bruno in the 909 car, then Drake Burgoon just up the road. A great scrap for about 8th or 7th spot. Look at the battle up in front of them just up the road. It's getting really wild. Trying to see what group that is behind Matthew Santiago. Look at this out the rear wing here. Philippe Samar just in front of this. But Carl Whitmer, Matthew Marlowe, Drake Burgoon all having a scrap for inside the top 10.
Yeah, this is fantastic. This is what you find in GT3 racing all over the world. The SRO has done such a great job of that. Look at all the different types of cars you see. I mean, in this one shot here, we got a Bentley, an Acura, or Honda, depending on where in the world you are, and a Lamborghini. And running nose to tail, not much difference between them. Further back, we've got side-by-side. I love what GT3 racing has become. Some really fun cars that are seriously fast, have some great tech on them, but find ways to be balanced. And you get close racing like we just saw right there.
Riding on board with Josh Staffen, he'll take that one, thank you very much. He goes through and sets his sights on the Porsche that's just up the road. That is Jonathan Lee in the number 7. And I believe he's got, if I remember correctly, yes, a Liqui livery on this car. Looking very sharp out there, running 13th in class right now behind Highcotter. And you might smell some blood in the water closing in on that Nissan GTR.
I think anytime you have a Liqui livery, it looks gorgeous. There's something about those colors that always seem to work whenever you see him on a race car. He's doing a nice job here, running in 13th. He's got Highcotter in front of him. And if you can keep Brian Highcotter in your sights, you're doing something right. Looks like Highcotter might have a run here, though, coming onto the front straightaway. It looked like Bruno might have run just a little bit wide there in the final corner.
And Lamborghini versus GTR, those are two machines that are very different in form factor, but big dive on the brakes, standing on the ABS into turn number 1. Nice late apex for Highcotter. He's going to gain that ground on exit. Bit of a wiggle out of the rear, and again, this is not an all-wheel drive car. Again, GT3 rear-wheel drive for these cars, so it doesn't get to leverage the all-wheel drive system that it gets to utilize on the street, but that will make that rear end a little bit nervous. But a great battle here for 11th spot.
Yeah, Chris Bruno up in front. Actually, a really interesting story. He hails from the Turks and Caicos Islands, and actually is a really accomplished athlete, both in golf. He was a 2-handicap golfer at one point before he kind of gave up golf to focus on other things. Really under pressure here, though. Here comes Highcotter to the inside. Let's see if Highcotter can make it stick. He's been working on this move here for some time.
Oh, big dive on the brakes again for Highcotter. He goes through, and Jonathan Lee saw the door open. He wanted to enter as well. GT4 driver off track. Bit of a bobble there for the number 7 as he gets the power down in the Porsche as they run side by side into the Schumacher S, and we'll move the 12 car up a spot and Bruno down.
Yeah, exactly right, and it's not going to be over for Bruno just yet. Look at these hungry cars running behind. There comes Staffen up the inside in the Lexus. He's got the Bentley of Johnson just behind, and as we talked about, Lee running in that Liqui livery Porsche, showing a lot of pace, got up alongside, and they made a little bit of contact there door to door, but a great job by both drivers to make that save. And the battle continues here. Fourth position just outside the top 10. That's how competitive this field has become.
You saw the sparks flying out from underneath. Oh, Jonathan Lee's wide. Coming into the final corner, kind of got the curb a little bit wrong and went for a bounce, but he recovered nicely. And the Porsche's strength is on corner exit. It just squats and goes with all the weight towards the rear of the car. And This battle continues. This has been a good one so far here, Ryan. I don't want to pull away.
Now, this is fantastic stuff. What a save that was from Lee. I thought he was dead to rights at that point, and somehow, not only did he bring it back in, but he was able to recover in such a way. He's already on the attack again. Taking a peek to the outside. Now the crossover move. Can he get that sticking to the inside here for the next run through this left-hander? Looks like the answer is no for the moment, but boy, this is a ton of pressure here for Bruno, who, like I said, was a tremendous golfer, but he also represented the Turks and Caicos in a FIFA World Cup qualifying run. They actually won a match for the first time in the history of the Turks and Caicos World Cup qualifying team, I guess you could say, the national team, in that context. And he was proud to say that he was in the FIFA video game for the World Cup at one point, because of his efforts on that team. Looks like we got a car off on the left. That's one of the GT4 BMWs, and that inserts itself right here into this scrap for, what, 12th, 13th, and 14th.
I'm trying to see what driver that was. I think it was the 021. And we'll go check in on the GT4 cars in a little while. But this battle's been so good and just outside the top 10 that we haven't been able to pull away without missing anything important. Continues. Philippe Simard has actually dropped behind Cody Blanton in GT3 to 6th place. So while he was fast in qualifying, it's not necessarily indicative of fast race pace. Not that he's not fast, but maybe not quite as quick as he was on the single lap. And on top of that, just got assigned a drive-through penalty, and he's serving it now.
Yeah, that's going to be costly. It is very hard to recover from these, especially with how clean this race has been to this point. We've seen some contact, some spins, but not much in the way of errors. And so when you make a mistake that leads to a drive-through like this, there are not going to be many opportunities to come back, and that is very costly here. The lead has grown in GT4, and Cavillon doing a wonderful job, up to 6.5 seconds now, just about first to second place. That is massive.
Yeah, not much of a battle going on in GT4 right now. Again, we haven't seen the lapping commence, but I imagine when it does, that's when it'll get a little bit wild. Behind, let's see, I think a little bit deeper in the field, there's a bit more battling going on, but I think behind Takis here in the 626 in the BMW. He's got Cameron Cinsano behind him, as well as an Aston Martin, which is, I love these Astons. I got a buddy, Kenton Cook, who many of you might be familiar with from GT4 America, runs the Aston Martin Vantage GT4, and here he is battling for 11th in class.
Yeah, that's Joseph Kostovich. In GT4, this Aston, all of a sudden, you see them left and right racing all over the world, but certainly within Pirelli GT4 America, and they had a new distributor come on board for Aston Martin Racing. Here comes the GT3 traffic. You could see that looming in the rearview mirror, and boy, that must have been an intimidating sight to see, and it doesn't go very quickly, does it? Yeah, this Aston has become omnipresent on the grid. Somehow able to survive that 3-wide moment.
And look at Ryan Hightotter up the middle, 3 wide, taking advantage of those tight situations, Ryan.
Oh, that's amazing, and that's experience right there also working in this group, but he might have dropped back behind that. No, that is a different Lamborghini, I think. That must be Marlowe, yeah.
Yes.
So he's now cracked the top 10, has Hightotter. Look how busy this is. Oh my goodness.
This is like Chicago rush hour traffic as everyone thunders onto the front straight. Bit of a bobble there for Matthew Marlowe. Made contact with one of the GT4 Audis now down the front straightaway. Chaos and confusion as we start hitting lap traffic here. And we still have 38 minutes of racing to go.
Onto the FCP Euro Mercedes coming out of the pits. I suspect that would have been Hertzen, who we saw with damage earlier. I think we had contact there at the bottom of the screen just a second ago. I'm not sure who that caught out, but it looked like maybe a spin after a bit of a tag. And boy, that was some wild stuff, and it's not done. Here comes Staffen on the attack now. He's up to 11th.
We'll go up the inside and then the outside. Some more GT4 cars in front of him, behind a couple of the FCP Euro and Liqui Moly livery cars. As you see the blue flags waving on the side of the racetrack, there's just an advisory flag. It's not a requirement to move out of the way. Look at this, Staffen all over the back of that number 7 of Jonathan Lee.
And that's a battle between 2 GT4 cars up ahead. They've got their own fight going on. These GT3 drivers, they're not going to be very patient waiting for their chance to get through. That is the worst of both worlds, when you have battles for position in 2 different classes reaching the same spot of the track simultaneously. So I think we had an NSX there in the grass on the inside of the corner, able to rejoin the track. Fortunately, everyone was able to get through that without too much in the way of contact, but that had to be some heart-in-your-throat kind of racing there for a few moments.
I think the driver that might have had a loop earlier in the lap could have been Matthew Marlowe, maybe. And he's down to 16th in class, which I think is farther down we saw him before. He's still working through GT4 traffic.
I think you're right. That is about the color scheme that I thought I saw go for a spin, but I only caught just a glimpse of that. So doing a good job here to try and recover, but yeah, that could be costly. Look at that.
Yeah, I think there's some damage
there at the front.
Yeah, some damage on the splitter, so that he might have gotten into the back of somebody as well. And you see the GT4 car in front of him slamming over the curbing here, which in that chicane is pretty sizable. You kind of want to stay away from that to keep yourself out of trouble as he comes back onto the front straightaway here. Closing in on halfway, and a reminder to check out the GT World Challenge America social channels to enter season-long giveaways from Asus ROG, Fanatec, and FCP Euro. You can get a chance to win a sim rig with a custom Asus ROG desktop, an Asus ROG monitor, Fanatec wheelbase, wheel pedals, and more. So lots to come this season from that, as well as on the racetrack. And we've had an amazing battle so far. Out up front, though, the 96, he's just put on a clinic right now, 5.5 seconds in front of Troy Barman.
Michael Cadacciolo doing a great job keeping the nose clean on that car. The lead just steadily growing even as they work through traffic here. And that's going to be the challenge now. There's no way to rest, even with a lead like he's got, because he's going to be constantly in traffic throughout the course of this race. And you have to balance the aggression. You can lose time in traffic, right? So you want to try and pick your spots and get through as quickly as you can. But on the flip side, your race can go totally awry in just the blink of an eye. So it's the real challenge of multi-class racing. Where do you take the risk? Who can you trust? That's the other thing. These are drivers that, by and large, have not really raced with one another with any kind of regularity. So you don't know each other's tendencies. And so that's something that might get better over the course of the year, but it's hard to be aggressive when you really don't have a read on what the driver around you is going to do.
For sure. So Cadacciolo enters turn number 1, 13 laps complete. There's Troy Barman working his way by. We haven't really talked about him so far. He's had a pretty quiet day running up inside the top 3. And Ryan, sometimes on a day like this, a quiet day is a really good day. You don't necessarily always want to be news in a GT World Challenge America race because if you're not leading, it's probably not good news. So Troy Barman running second right now, about 5 seconds back from the race leader and on track for a podium.
Took the words out of my mouth for sure. If you can't be out front, just having a nice quiet day running in podium contention, that's a good place to be. And this, unlike GT Rivals, which came down to basically a runoff, the final race settling the championship there, we will be handing out points, at least that's the plan, at each of the races this season. So that puts a value on consistency that wasn't there in the same way back in season 1 of the championship. So having a nice quiet run to second, maybe this is not the best track for the Mercedes, although I say that's clearly not true because the top 5 are all Mercedes, so take that one back. That's definitely not an explanation here. But nevertheless, maybe this just isn't the best track for Troy, and so Troy can settle in, score some points, and he has chipped away at that lead a little bit. It's now come down under 5 seconds, so with 33 minutes still to go, there's definitely still a chance to make a run. But even still, if he comes home in second, nothing wrong with that. You can regroup from there and have a chance to fight for a championship over the course of the year.
In third place, there's Lucas Muller. We talked about him briefly earlier, but Cody Blanton is right behind him, putting pressure on to get back up on the podium. And for several of these drivers, entering their first ever FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports races, getting a podium in your first event is pretty darn good. Also, notice the sun getting lower and lower in the sky. We're late in the afternoon here, Ryan. Maybe that's a factor. You can see the glare. Visibility as well as traffic going to be a concern in the final half of this race.
This simulation, I should say, is just gorgeous. It is so great to look at. It sounds wonderful, as all the folks watching at home can hear for themselves when we're not blabbing on too much over it. The car noises are absolutely stunning, and they do such a great job of rendering things like the sunset, the glare from the sunset in your eyes, and anyone who's even driven on the highway knows how distracting and uncomfortable that can be. And maybe that's not necessarily what you want when you're trying to enjoy playing a video game, but this is more than that. This is really trying to simulate what it's like to race in an SRO event somewhere in one of the SRO championships around the world. And that's a big part of it. So I have to give all the credit to the folks at Kunos. They do a great job making this as real as it can be. Really puts you in the driver's seat of one of these GT3 or GT4 cars.
Carl Whitmer under attack right now in his number 22 Acura NSX GT3. Jonathan Lee again with the liquid moly colors on that number 7. Right behind him, it's about 0.2 of a second as they race down towards the far end of the track and into the braking zone.
Oh, that was close right there. That's the speed differential between the GT3 and GT4 cars on display. That really boxed Whitmer in. Unfortunately for Lee, there just wasn't anywhere to go to take advantage of the run that he got. But he's got some ahead of steam here and definitely piling the pressure onto Whitmer. This is for the 9th spot, as you can see up on the left. We're on board with Lee right here. Whitmer really valued by, whoa, big twitch, and he slides wide. I think that's going to let Lee get to the inside and maybe even get through. But Whitmer, a guy that Honda has a lot of excitement for. They've got him in their young driver program here in North America, and he's going toe-to-toe here with a really accomplished sim racer in Lee.
I think they just both stubbed their toe running into each other on the back straightaway heading into the final couple of corners. Jonathan Lee grabs the spot for now. Brian Heitkotter has worked his way up into 8th, but certainly not the force that he was last season, Ryan. And again, after coming from being so dominant to be 8th, 7th, even 6th, that would feel like a disappointment for today. I'm curious if he'll be back in his normal form at the next event. Remember, next week's race is actually a 6-hour endurance race at Spa-Francorchamps, so we'll see if he's back in normal form there, or if this might be the new normal for Brian Heitkotter.
Well, one thing I think is different here this time around, the proportion of real-world drivers to, you can almost say sim pros, but guys who spend a lot of time sim racing. It's tilted more towards the sim racers here in this run of the championship than it did back in GT Rivals. And also in GT Rivals, we had a lot of drivers who were new to Assetto Corsa Competizione. By this time now, we're looking at either real-world drivers who have significant ACC experience they didn't have the first time, or you have a lot more guys who spend a lot of time on ACC. Maybe that's their job, maybe that's just their hobby, but they spend a lot of time on it and focus on it. And I think the challenge is going to be much greater, even for a driver of Brian's caliber. I mean, he is an exceptional road racing driver in the real world, but as I said earlier, cut his teeth in sim racing. That's how he got his opportunity. So that's why we expect such great things from him. I'm a little bit surprised to see him down the order, but I think also what we're learning here, he did not have a good qualifying run, and that might not be something he can overcome as easily as he did back in the GT Rivals series, given the strength of this field and its relative understanding and experience with Assetto Corsa Competizione.
Having another look here at Chris Bruno from Champion Motorsports. Again, this group of drivers has one of the best looking liveries I've seen on any GT3 car, let alone spreading them across the different platforms that they have. A couple Bentleys, a couple Lamborghinis out there. Big moment through the chicane for Chris Bruno, climbing up on the curbs, the sunset bathing Nurburgring in a golden glow with 28 minutes to go. And Lamborghini versus Colin Johnson right behind him, a teammate in a similarly looking Bentley.
Yes, similarly looking in liveries, but not at all in terms of the way that the car is designed. You got the front engine Bentley, which is right-hand drive as well. That's another interesting thing about the Bentley relative to so many of the cars in this field, and that's something that takes a little getting used to, whether it's in the sim or in the real world. And then the Lamborghini, which has the mid-engine configuration, shares a lot of its infrastructure, I guess you could say, with the Audi GT3 platform, the R8. There's a lot of the similarities there. But, you know, it is interesting. These are both Volkswagen Auto Group manufacturers here, so they do have some shared similarities in that regard. But you look at them, and there could be hardly any more different vehicles, just visually. And yet, as we talk about so often, here they are running lap times that are nearly identical with one another.
And continuing to run about 13th and 14th in class. We'll jump back briefly to find GT4 once more, and I know that these battles have not been quite as close as some of the GT3 ones. Looking back, Bowers in 10th in the 777 car is having a bit of a moment right now. As soon as I can get down to him. Sean Bowers in the Audi. You look behind him, that is, looks like the number 240 of Kostovic. And they're having a great fight here. A couple German brands going at it.
Bowers is actually a Nissan automotive technician and does a lot of sim racing, races in a couple of different leagues. Loves to collect car projects but never finish them, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. So doing a nice job there. And here's Kostovic in the Aston Martin that we were talking about earlier, and you know, this is a little bit further down the running order, but nevertheless a good duel, and every position matters, that's for sure.
There goes the 34 car on by. There's 34 being driven by John Miller. I think he had a little bit of a loop earlier, as you see right in front of them. Bowers having to kind of give way here again. We mentioned the blue flags earlier, not a requirement to get out of the way, but it is just an advisory flag so that you know that there is faster traffic approaching from behind. And I'm sure the GT3 drivers would rather it be compulsory, but I don't think that that's going to happen, so they're going to have to live with it.
Yeah, that's right, and you know, they understand. Most of them have been on the other end of this, running in an event one time or another in the lower class, and they do their best to get out of the way. But I think realistically, they've got their own class to worry about, and sometimes you're locked in a duel of your own, and you just have to think to yourself, you know what, the GT3 guys, they can wait here for a little while. That's the nature of multi-class racing, and as I've said before, it ebbs and it flows, and sometimes you benefit from it, other times not so much.
Checking back in with 6th place, Matthew Santiago, who again is in one of the Champion Motorsports cars, one of the Bentleys. He's got Drake Burgoon not too far behind him, and Hamza Gulzar right up the road a little ways. But Santiago and Burgoon, I think, have just actually swapped positions, and Burgoon now chasing, or vice versa, I should say. Santiago chasing Burgoon, again in 2 identical Bentleys.
I want to give a shout out to Matthew's new daughter, Izzy, just born over the summer, a few months back. I understand Izzy and his wife Lee are watching and cheering him on right now, and a lot to cheer about, running inside the top 10, dropping back into the 7th spot for the moment, but putting on a nice challenge. And I don't think this scrap is done yet by any stretch. Closing in under braking here, trying to get up in behind that Bentley, which has such a big greenhouse, punches a huge hole in the air, and that might provide the opportunity to get a bit of a slipstream here down the front straightaway, and might have some Bentley on Bentley action before it's all said and done.
Deep on the brakes into turn number 1, and that's a tight corner for these big long wheelbase Bentleys. And as they sweep through into the tighter sections, this is probably not where the strength of this car is relative to the other GT3 machines, but when you're racing a similar chassis, it's not going to be too difficult to keep up with pace. Checking back in on the race leader, it's still about a 6-second lead for Kadashiolu in the number 96. Troy Barman has been keeping him honest, and he's still kind of lingering in the background of this, so he's making sure that Michael doesn't get too far up the road. But Lucas Mueller about 4 seconds back from that. He's got Cody Blanton, who's been sticking tight up underneath that rear wing all race long.
Yeah, that's really shaping up to be a good battle here. So this is Lucas with a K. Remember, we've got 2 Lucas Muellers racing in this race, spelled differently. That's kind of thankful on our end that there at least is something to differentiate the two, because they're teammates as well. And this is for the final podium spot, and Blanton is doing a good job staying right there in the mix. This has been such a dominant effort from the Mercedes, and I'm interested because this is the older generation Mercedes. If you've been with us from the beginning, and maybe even if you haven't, you might have seen the news that coming out with the new DLC here soon for ACC, you'll have access to the Evo version of the Mercedes-AMG GT3, as well as the Evo for the Ferrari 488 GT3, the double Evo. But this is the older gen Mercedes, and it shows why it was so successful for so long. In fact, Mercedes-AMG was really, really slow to put out an Evo. They could have done it much sooner per the regulations, but chose not to because the car was having such success.
Mercedes is very well utilized today. Top 5 drivers all running in the Mercedes-AMG platform. Look at Colin Johnson, 2 wheels off as they come to the final corner. A bit of a wide entry, late apex. Philippe Samard, the pole sitter. This has not gone the way that he would like it to go, but here he is now trying to get himself back towards the top 10, looking for 13th place on the drag race down the front stretch.
had the drive-through earlier after just a poor start to the race. Not exactly sure what happened on that opening lap, but dropped back early on and then picked up a drive-through at one point a few laps back, and has been on a recovery drive ever since. That was a slick move up the inside of the Bentley, so you can move Samardau up into the 13th spot. He's got some work to do to try and chase down the next position, some 13 seconds up the road.
Just inside the top 10, Brian Heitkotter has Jonathan Lee behind him in the number 7. And we talked about Heitkotter maybe having some more drivers in this field that can compete with him and keep him down the order. Jonathan Lee going to take the battle to him into the curve at the far end of the facility. Lee tucks in within a half a car length. Now that Porsche is so good at exiting corners. But look at that Nissan, same thing, just gets up and goes when it's time to go on the straightaways.
Now, this is something we didn't see much of at all in GT Rivals. Pressure on Brian Heitkotter, but when we did, he really was a stone wall. He did not crack under that pressure, and David Perel, who was his closest rival in the second half of the season, threw a lot at him and really put a lot of pressure on him over the course of several races. We really just didn't see much in the way of weakness from Heitkotter. So Lee's got his hands full right now. It does appear that he's got the pace at least through the twisty stuff. But you're right, that Nissan has a motor. If you go all the way back to February of this year at the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12 hour, as Lee a little late on the brakes there and overshoots the final corner. But the Nissan was run there and had a really good run. And Old Godzilla, as it's called, kind of in its swan song in international competition, showed why it's such a fan favorite. Unfortunately, you just don't see these cars running outside of Japan and out of Super GT and the GT300 class. That's about it at this point, which is a shame because it's a unique looking car, it sounds good, and just a gorgeous piece of machinery.
And has some lap traffic to deal with right now, and Jonathan Lee's going to shortcut it. Pull hard left now, going to use the M4 as a pick. And now Heitkotter does the same, 3 wide with the GT4 car up the middle, and they squeeze on through, drivers right and drivers left, now side by side towards the Ford curve. Heitkotter out a little bit wide out into the marbles, and Lee tries to power around. He can't do it though, going to try to cross him up this time as they race down towards the far end of the track. Ryan, great stuff between these two.
It was great respect as well. Heitkotter left plenty of room on the inside, ramped the outside, carrying a lot of speed, and I mean, he was just a few inches from dropping a wheel in the grass, and we could have been telling a very different story about how that played out. I do think, too, that maybe Lee conceded to some degree because he was off in the grass trying to make his way around first the GT4 car and then ultimately around Heitkotter as well, and I'm not sure how our stewards are going to view that maneuver, so that might have been a prudent choice just to take any potential decision out of their hands and regroup, give yourself as much time as possible to try and make that move again.
Drake Burgoon in the number 415. He has a 5-second penalty that will be added to his time at the end of the race. I'm not exactly sure what that was for, but he will again have to basically gain a 5-second or greater gap from Matthew Santiago at the end of this race if he would like to keep 6th place. But right now Santiago is only about 1.6 seconds back as these guys continue to battle for position. Philippe Samard up to 11th as he continues his charge back forward after early issues in this race.
Yep, that's right. It's been a good recovery for the Ferrari, but has to be kicking himself a little bit for picking up the penalty. And again, I wish we knew what happened at the start that caused him to drop back, because he had a really great run in qualifying. He was able to get ahead of Ganakcioglu by a couple tenths of a second in qualifying to earn the pole, but really never could benefit from that. And Ganakcioglu has been able to sprint out and basically run away and hide ever since he got the lead. So Samar doing his best to try and recover, get something to show for the effort at least, hopefully a top 10 finish that appears to be in reach, but still a lot of work to do, 18 minutes remaining.
Checking back in GT4, Joseph Kosovic has Cameron Sansano behind him, about a half a second back in that yellow Mercedes with a GT3 car up the inside. I believe that is actually Burgoon that has just gone by. The traffic to deal with. Burgoon's going to try to squeeze up drivers right. 17 and a half minutes to go. And this battle has been significantly more tame than the ones in GT3. But Ryan, once you get those GT3 cars kind of slicing and dicing amongst GT4, as you see here, it makes it tricky to race each other.
It does. You're especially in the slower class, like the GT4 cars are here in this instance. it puts a lot of strain on you because you're driving out the windshield, of course, in whatever battle you might be in, but also constantly managing the gap behind, looking in the mirror, looking at your relative screen, doing whatever you can to make sure that you don't impede the progress of the GT3 cars or you're not surprised by them when they arrive on the scene, because they arrive quickly. There is a pretty significant speed difference between the two classes, somewhere in the ballpark of 10 seconds a lap here at this track.
I'm jumping back to third place, Lucas Moeller in the 44. He's got Cody Blanton behind him, about a second and a half back, but why do I want to switch to him? Look at this, 3 GT4 cars all nose to tail in front of him. It's going to be really busy, and he's going to dive up underneath one of those Maseratis and get through there, but still 1 down, 2 to go. That might bring in Cody Blanton a little closer. I
mentioned that both Lucas Moellers drive for the Haupt Racing team, HRT, and that is a team that came onto the scene here this year. It took over effectively from a different team that had been running Mercedes in Europe for a long time, but he runs for their sim racing arm and actually has a hands-on role training their real-world drivers in sim racing, not just for sim racing competitions, but also using the sims in order to basically do some of their testing away from the racetrack and prepare them. So it's really cool to see how we've seen this in Formula One for quite some time, but it's trickling down rather to other forms of racing as well, where integrating sim racing into your real-world racing team is viewed as a real value proposition, and it's provided great opportunities for some sim racers out there who've been at it for a while and displaying their speed to be able to help their real-world counterparts, and hopefully one day we see some crossover where it gives the sim racing drivers opportunities to get on the real-world track as well.
Having a look here at Nate Vincent in the FCP Euro Mercedes-AMG GT3, the number 72. And Nate, again, coming from a background of driving front-wheel drive touring cars, this is certainly a different vehicle to be driving here, Ryan. So how difficult is that to go from a front-wheel drive touring car in the real world to a rear-wheel drive sim racing car? And is that transition a difficult task, do you think?
I think it would be, but you do see guys do it with some regularity and use the touring cars as a stepping stone into GT racing. To me, I've never done anything on track with a front-wheel drive car. I've done a little bit of sim racing with front-wheel drive cars, but I find it hard to wrap my head around. It's such a different philosophy in terms of how you drive them to extract the speed, and I think that would be a challenge. But to those who have sincerely more talent than I do, it probably becomes a little bit easier to make that happen, and Nate falls into that category. He's a former Pirelli World Challenge Rookie of the Year. If you go back to 2018, has raced in touring cars now the last 3 years, 2 full seasons, 2018 and 2019. A couple of races this year, but as we talked about earlier, the FCP Euro guys had to shut down the program early due to COVID, understandably, but the intention is for them to be back, and we can't wait. He was runner-up in the TC America TCR Championship a year ago and really showed a lot of pace. So they've been a great addition to the grid, and great to see them doubling down as well in their commitment to sim racing, helping us out with this championship this year.
Here's the number 88 Audi. This is Vinny Lima in the NGP Motorsports Audi, and this is a beautiful livery on this car. First of all, it's damaged a little bit. You can see on the nose here that there's a little bit of damage on that front clip of that Audi, but he's running 23rd, a couple seconds behind Nate Vincent. Now, while we have a moment, while the action is calm just a little bit, reminder to check the GT World Challenge America social channels on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram to enter the season-long giveaways from Asus ROG, Fanatec, and FCP Euro. That includes a sim rig with a custom Asus ROG desktop, Asus ROG monitor, Fanatec wheelbase, wheel pedals, and more. So make sure you check out GT World Challenge America on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We've got about 13 minutes left here, Ryan. Already, things are beginning to work their way towards a close. And Kajakshilu out front in the number 96 Mercedes has put on a clinic out here today. And maybe it's too early to tell how the season's going to go, but if I'm everybody else, I'm looking at this 96, and he's the target for next weekend's spot.
Well, I know as well, when we had a bit of a test run last week just to make sure things were working on our end, and I was paying a little bit of attention at least to how that test race played out, and he was a name that was up towards the top there as well. So yeah, I think the rest of the field should be on notice that Michael Canacciolo is going to be one to contend with over the course of this season. He's done a great job getting out front and then just managing that gap. It's ebbed and flowed a little bit, down under 5 seconds occasionally, but it seems like every time that Garmin is able to mount any kind of challenge, Canacciolo is able to find an answer, and he pulls that lead right back out. 5.5 seconds. This is about where it has lived here for the bulk of this race, and that speaks to a driver who is totally under control, knows the circumstance, knows what the gap is, not taking any unnecessary risks, and just doing his best to maintain that gap here with just over 10 minutes remaining.
Jonathan Lee checking back in the Liqui Moly car. If we look backwards, we should be seeing Carl Whitmer in that BMW. I think Carl is in the Acura today. And let me just double check. Yes, that is the case. But look at Brian Highcutter, big slide through that corner with the 22 all over his rear wing. And Highcutter has actually dropped a spot with Jonathan Lee going up to 8th. And now Whitmer all over the back of that Nissan. This
is really interesting to see Highcutter starting to struggle over the course of the long run. That is not something we were used to seeing here, but yeah, he's under a ton of pressure here from Carl Whitmer in that Acura Honda NSX. Again, depending on where in the world you are. In the States, it's an Acura. Over in Europe, it is a Honda. I think China and the U.S. market are where you find it as an Acura, and that's proven to be a really potent package. It was so strong this year in GT World Challenge America. We saw Trent Hinman and Shelby Blackstock dominate the championship with a bunch of overall wins, championship in the silver class as well. Going back to last year, we saw Real Time Racing campaign one of these cars with a lot of success. We also saw the Racers Edge team that Hinman and Blackstock ran with. They won the championship in Pro-Am with Kyle Marcelli as well as Martin Barkey. And all over the world, this car seems to be getting stronger and stronger. Had a great run at the 24 Hours of Spa a couple of weeks ago, and was, I think, the highest finishing non-German manufacturer, and that was the second straight year that they were able to do that. So there's a lot of pace in this car, and it's running inside the top 10 here, as we became accustomed to back in GT Rivals as well. And Carl Whitmer was the winner from our Bathurst race last season at Mount Panorama, so took the Acura 2 victory lane in GT Rivals as well. We're down to underneath the last 10 minutes, back up in 13th place, Colin Johnson for Champion Motorsports. He is right in front of Josh Staffen, who is a multi-time race winner from last season in GT Rivals. A great scrap here. And Josh, I think, is the only taker of the Lexus here this afternoon. That's a thundering car that is one of my favorites in the real world, and he's taking it to a fight for 13th place. Yeah, you don't see a ton of these anywhere, really. Just a handful of them racing outside of Japan, at least. But I love them, too, and they've proven to be pretty fast. Actually, GT World Challenge Europe this year, we've seen the Lexus factor in a time or two with, I think, a silver class lineup, if memory serves there. And it's done well in GT Rivals with Staffen at the wheel. I think all of these cars we have seen, with the right driver at the right time on the right track, can have a chance at the win, and that's what the Balance of Performance system is all about. Staffen has proven to be a really adept sim racer, and I think running a little further down than maybe I would have expected, but having a great scrap, like you said, here fighting over 13th. Just ahead of them is Chris Bruno, another CMS driver. They are everywhere, it seems like, here, Ryan, and they're all running fairly well, and I don't think any of them have had major contact today, so they've been doing a great job with all the chaos that's been surrounding at least the start of this race. Colin Johnson right ahead of Staffen, feeling that pressure. Not sure how much of it he can see with that big rear wing in the way, but the golden glow of the Nurburgring only about 8 minutes away from a checkered flag here as the battles continue throughout the field. Close competition no matter where you look. It seems like we got word that a little bit further down in the order in GT4, a couple of Maseratis are doing battle. I mean, that's quite a ways down, unfortunately, in the running order there, but that's what you love. Anywhere you look, you find something to catch your eye, a good battle on track. And here we go, JT Tammy in one of those Maseratis. I think there was another one close in tow. Here we go, yeah. Juan Reynoso there running in the other one, and he said that he likes cars that slide around a lot, so that's why he chose this one. As I said earlier, this car, unique among the GT4 offerings, does not have the driver aids, does not have the traction control and ABS, so you really have to push these things hard, and it rewards drivers with great car control.
And another really neat looking car as well. It's aesthetically very pleasing to my eyes, and I'm sure for very many others as well.
Sounds great too, by the way.
It does. It's a really thunderous car. As you see some GT3 cars working through the picture, squeezing the number 90 just a little bit into the chicane. There's Staffen continuing his battle as the driver in front of him, I think again that was Johnson, running a little bit wide. As this continues onto the front straightaway here, 6 minutes and 50 seconds left. Oh, slow on exit. Is that Bruno? Yes, it is. So Chris Bruno, real slow at corner exit. I wonder if he maybe had cut the track a little bit or if he had just gotten a poor run on corner exit, but he will drop back and lose a few spots in just a straightaway.
And that is costly right there, and it shows how close this midfield is. Just one little mistake, whatever it was, and he drops a couple of spots. So all the way back to 13th right now. Not a ton of time left to recover that lost ground unless he can force a mistake from the drivers up ahead.
Beautiful sunset here in Assetto Corsa Competizione. As the 44 drivers that started this race, I think we've got almost all of them still running on the racetrack, which is a testament to after the chaos of the start, we really haven't seen a whole lot of car contact or spins or much of any of that. It's been a very clean race to start off our FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. So a successful first race, and Ryan, to kind of set the stage for next week, we've got a 6-hour endurance race, driver swaps, and the whole gamut into really our second round of the season. So that's going to be a lot of fun, and we just kind of came off the spa in the real world a few weeks back, and going to do it in the sim next week.
Yeah, that's going to be really fun. I love the track. It's a great venue, and a great venue for endurance racing as well. So that should be really fun to see. Looking down the rest of the schedule, the following week we've got an event at Bathurst. Then if you fast forward to December 6th, Zandvoort in the Netherlands will host the next round of the championship. Monza and Laguna Seca to close things out. That'll be January 10th and 24th respectively. So some great races to choose from. So many great tracks in Assetto Corsa Competizione, but I have to say, when I saw they were adding Imola, my heart went all aflutter. I love that track, and I cannot wait to have it rendered in ACC.
I'm just waiting to see if we can get Watkins Glen and Road America to make my heart flutter. I like Imola, don't get me wrong, but the National Park of Speed and the Super Speedway of road courses, I'd love to see those added at some point. Meanwhile, 5 minutes to go. Kadacioglu continues to lead, and let's be honest here. While he has a sizable lead, he is not completely out of harm's way, still battling traffic, only 7 seconds. If he were to get turned around battling some traffic, Troy Barman would be in the catbird seat for this one.
Yes, that's right, and while that is probably unlikely thanks to maneuvers like that one, that was really, really smart driving. It's going to kill his lap time, but he backed out of a 3-wide scenario through, I think that was the Schumacher S back there, and that was really smart not to push the issue. He's got a big lead, lost a bunch of it. It was up to about 7 seconds. It's down to 5, so it was costly, but it would have been way more costly to take the risk, have contact, and go flying off course. And lest we forget, there was a race that it looked like Brian Highcotter had won, going back to GT Rivals, and he had contact trying to make his way through lap traffic and lost the race. So it definitely can happen. Wouldn't say it's likely because Kadacioglu's been great, really smart, really measured with his aggression, but sometimes it's out of your hands, and that's what he has to be worried about right now, I think.
Controlling your own destiny. When you're out front, it seems easy. Then you got multi-class, and Matthew Santiago made a mistake in the chicane here. Jonathan Lee will go up the inside and take that spot away, as Santiago will have to give up a little bit of ground. So easy to catch the curbs just a little bit wrong there, Ryan, and send your car through for a cut course. But he's going to battle back here on the front straight.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that Lee made contact with the curb in a rather untoward manner in that same part of the track. It looked like he might be flying off the track, but was able to save it and has been running back up through the field ever since. That was good, respectful racing right there. Maybe a bit of a pick move by Lee, trapping Santiago behind the GT4 BMW that we saw in that shot a moment ago. But I'll say this, Lee has been very impressive. His drive up through the field has been really quite clever in the way he's used traffic, has not been overly aggressive to my eye, and he's really stood out as one of the drivers of the day here, coming from a bit further back on the grid.
That pristine white Porsche has collected quite a bit of marbles and rubber on the side skirts. It'll need a good wash after this race. Flashing the headlights up above. There's some traffic that everybody's working through now on the binders at the far end of the racetrack. As Jonathan Lee tries to run away, the two cars in front of him making contact once, twice, three times. They hook each other, and he gets turned. Lee's gonna slam into the barriers, contact with one of the FCP Euro cars, and Jonathan Lee is out.
That is how quickly it can go wrong. That's what we were talking about with Kondaccioglu. You just don't want to find yourself in a position where you could get caught out. Let's take a look here and see what it looked like from the outside. We have the onboard look. Yeah. Well, you called the contact there a couple of times between the two cars he was chasing. They were able to straighten it out. It looked like, here it is, off of this corner. Oh, boy, that was close. He almost snuck through.
Live action as we pick up the white flag. Kondaccioglu now working through some traffic. I think we're on the last lap here, Ryan. So Kondaccioglu 4.1 seconds up the road from second place, Troy Barman.
Yeah, that lead has come down about 3 seconds here over the last lap and a half or so, but plenty of gap, plenty of margin. No reason to push too hard or take too many risks at this point. Kondaccioglu has been just about perfect in the way he's handled this to this point, so I would be very surprised to see the kind of mistake that would be required to bring Barman back into the mix. It looks like it's pretty well settled. Our podium at this point, Barman in second, Lucas Moeller in third. It's about a second between second and third place, a little bit more at this point, but still closely contested a little bit further back.
And with 13 seconds left, we might get a whole other lap here as we come out of the final corner across the line. This time through for Michael Kondaccioglu, it will be white flag, and he'll have to maintain that 4-second lead one more time around. Troy Barman still hoping that he can find some luck with Kondaccioglu's expense, I should say. And throughout the rest of the field, they've found a little bit of gaps to race. So while Kondaccioglu races, let's check in on GT4, and it has been a blowout today, with Cavillon out front in the number 56 Porsche. Ludovic doused behind, 24 seconds back.
Cavillon's done great and comes from a household of sim racers. Her spouse is taking part in the SRO Esports Asia series that is running in conjunction with what we're doing here with our North American series. That's Mia Rose, by the way. And so they do a lot of sim racing, clearly, and showing just how good that she is. In Cavillon right there with a massive lead in GT4.
And JT Tammy was battling Juan Reynoso in the number 90 Maserati, but that battle has fizzled for now. Let's head back out front for Michael Kondaccioglu as he heads through the Schumacher S for the final time here at the Nurburgring. This has been a dominant showing, and if everybody else that's racing should be looking at this number 96 and going, that's the target. I think a lot of people came in expecting Heitkotter to be the one with the target on his back. I think Kondaccioglu has got to be that driver now.
Well, I'm not sure I'm ready to completely pass it over, but he definitely has done something to give me pause and force me to consider it. It's been a really smart drive mixed with the speed, of course, to build the lead that he has. And Michael Kondaccioglu, if he can put this kind of performance together consistently, is going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Lots of racing to do this season, and it all started today at the Nürburgring, but the first winner in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is Michael Kondaccioglu across the line, checkered flag, and wins it in dominant fashion. Behind him, it's Troy Barman, second place, Lucas Moeller, Lucas with a K across the line in third. He'll be the last on the podium. Cody Blanton, valiant effort to come home in fourth. Hamza Gulzar in the number 14 Mercedes, a quiet day for him, but a top 5 regardless.
And let's keep an eye on Drake Burgoon. Remember, he's got that 5-second penalty. Right now, he has just over 5 seconds between himself and 7th place Santiago. He needs to keep that up if he's going to hold on to the 6th spot. At the last timing line, it was up to 5.8 seconds. That would be enough, but it's a close margin to say the least. Here comes Burgoon, and now we'll take a look back at Santiago. Was he able to close in? Looks like some traffic to deal with, and that might have been costly.
Yeah, plus 6.2, so Burgoon will hang on to 6th spot. Brian Heitkotter 8th, and Carl Whitmer 9th. Philippe Samard 1st to 10th. Probably a disappointing day for him, but a top 10 all regardless. Josh Staffen going to come home in 11th, and Colin Johnson and Jonathan Lee, who we mentioned had that issue earlier. Actually, I think Lee might have gotten through Colin Johnson on the final lap. He has indeed, so move Jonathan Lee up to 12th. Good recovery after the contact on the back straightaway.
Yeah, great point there, and I think credit to the drive he had earlier to build a bit of a gap where it didn't prove to be overly costly, able to recover and get to 12th. Looking at this finishing order, one thing that stands out to me, we talked about horses for courses. Our top 10 is 8 of them. We have a bunch of Mercedes, Bentleys, and Nissans. What do they have in common? Bigger, front-engined cars. That seemed to be the advantage here at the Nurburgring. Not sure that's going to be the case the rest of the season, though, but I did find that interesting that those 3 cars do share quite a bit in terms of the way that they're designed and constructed, and they make up our top 8 positions, I think.
In GT4, first winner in the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is Honor Cavillon. Ludovic Daust in 2nd, and Simon Fisher in 3rd. That is your podium in the GT4 category. Then Caleb John Lavender and JT Tammy rounding out your top 5 there. What a race. That was a lot of fun. First time ever doing multi-class in this environment, Ryan, and it certainly proved to be entertaining. Here is a look at your finishing order. Kandashiolu again. Mercedes sweep in the top 5 at a home track for them for that chassis. All well done and all very good driving. A couple of Bentleys, a Nissan, a Honda, or an Acura and a Ferrari all inside the top 10. So while the top 5 was all Mercedes dominant, the bottom half of the top 10 was quite diverse.
I don't expect it to be a top 5 sweep for Mercedes at any point again in the championship. That is remarkable. Probably speaks to an inherent advantage in this type of racetrack with that configuration. Like I said, bigger car, front engine, a lot of weight at the front of the car. But as we go to some of the different tracks on the calendar, that's going to change around, and we'll see the different configurations come to the front, whether it's the mid-engine Ferrari, Lamborghini, the rear-engine Porsche, or what have you. But anyway, really interesting to see how that played out here in the first race of the year. And it's all German cars at the front of the field in GT4 as well, with 3 Caymans and an Audi in the top 4 spots.
Take a look down the rest of the bottom of the order there, Ryan, and take it away. I'm curious about the GT4 categories there. We'll read through the rest of those finishers there.
Yeah, Cavillon, Daust, and Fisher there in the top 3. Then we got Lavender doing a great job in the Audi, which is cool to see. And then those 2 Maseratis that we talked about. Awesome for Tammy and Reynoso to come home with top 10 finishes in what is without a doubt the oldest car in the field, a car that was not designed to be a GT4 car either, and has been converted over, but has had some success in the real world, and it's really cool to see that carry over into the virtual world as well. I hope that we have a couple other qualifiers in future events in GT4 run that Maserati platform, because it's a unique looking and sounding car with a different story to tell relative to the rest of the GT4 field.
And one more thing we should mention, of course, we've got CrowdStrike as one of our partners. The CrowdStrike fastest lap of the race, Kandashiolu with a 1:54.291, the quickest driver out there and the fastest one over the course of the entire race, Ryan. So he did a great job, collects that CrowdStrike award as our first round of racing here is complete.
Well, we talked about the driver that wins in this multi-class environment is going to have a big toolbox to draw from of different skills, and Kandashiolu appears to have them all. Fast in qualifying, started 2nd. Fast in race trim as well with the fastest lap of the race, and then picture perfect working through traffic. We saw it a couple of times when we were following his progress. Patient, didn't take unnecessary risks, decisive when he did take risks, and did a phenomenal job. Definitely a deserving winner, and displayed a wide variety of different skills that are going to be ones to contend with, it would appear, as the season continues.
We're going to take a very short break. We'll be back with winner interviews here in just one moment. Stay put. We'll be right back.
Well, welcome back to the Nurburgring. Time to speak to a couple of winners. We'll start with our GT4 winner, Anor Cavillon. Congratulations, a dominant performance in GT4 here today. A win by over 20 seconds, I believe, in the final analysis. But you had a lot of traffic to deal with between the two different classes. How difficult was that over the course of 1 hour?
Thanks, and I found that pretty easy actually because I've been in the opposite position plenty of time, being GD3 and lapping GD4s. So I drove in a way that I would want a GT4 to drive if I was driving a GT3, and I think I did that pretty well.
I would say so as well. The results certainly bear that out. Porsche, really strong. Top threes, all Porsche Caymans. What was it about the Porsche platform that really suited itself to the Nürburgring track layout?
Well, I think it's because of the engine at the back, which gives it plenty of traction, which is pretty important at the Nürburgring GP.
Definitely. And finally, what was it that encouraged you to attempt to qualify for this and ultimately grabbed your attention to join us for this championship?
Well, the fact that it is an SRO sanctioned series, which gives it a lot of importance, I think, in the ACC scene. So yeah, that was mostly that.
Very good. It was wonderful to have you racing with us. Congratulations on the great win. We hope to see you in future races as well.
Thanks. I hope to as well.
It's an Cavillon winner in the GT4 class here this time around. And I think with that, we'll go ahead and move to our GT3 winner. So, Michael, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, we'd love to chat with you here. Congratulations. A great win. We saw that you were able to take the lead fairly early on, but I'm a little bit unclear how you were able to do that. I know you started up front. What was the start of the race like? How did you grab the lead?
Yeah, so sorry, can you hear me? It doesn't look
Yes,
like
we
my
can
mic's
hear
on.
you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the start, we just honestly it was one of my best starts ever. I think the Ferrari had some issues off the line, Samard. So and he kind of got engulfed by a bunch of AMGs, it looked like, but we were into turn one clean, and just from there it was about managing the rest of the race and making sure we didn't slow down during the lapping process of GT4s. So I mean, yeah, the start was really key.
Once you took the lead, it seemed like it held at about 4, 5, 6 seconds throughout the course of the whole race. How much were you aware of the gap, and were you managing that gap throughout the course of your run?
Yeah, that was kind of, I was honestly focusing on that gap more than my own lap times. It seemed that it was, we were very similar pace and very similar pace specifically when lapping the GT4 cars, which obviously slows us down a bit. So it was about managing that gap, making sure that we get past as soon as possible. And yeah, it was definitely about management.
The GT4 traffic, that's a new element for us. When we ran GT Rivals back in the spring, it was all GT3 cars. This adds a new dynamic for sure. How challenging was it knowing when to be aggressive, when to be patient, so that you can maintain that lead, but also not take any risks that might take you out?
Yeah, it's definitely a new challenging element. It's honestly, it's about kind of racing your own race and waiting for, coming out of corners seemed to be the best time to get around them without losing too much time. I honestly, the GT4s did a great job today. So it wasn't too difficult, but it's definitely an element that that can spice up a race. So it was about managing that lapping of them.
In GT4, we saw the top three swept by Porsches. In GT3, the top five swept by Mercedes AMG GT3s. And Anor's explanation that was in GT4 that the rear engine Porsche had an advantage, but the Mercedes with a much different construction with the front engine layout. What was it that you were able to exploit to your advantage about the way the Mercedes makes its speed that clearly had an advantage, not just for you, but the rest of the Mercedes runners here today?
That's a great question. The Merc is just a really powerful car at most tracks. So it's kind of one of the best front engine cars in terms of getting that rotation. So it feels a lot like a rear engine car. So it has that same sort of advantage at the Nurburgring. And I think you'll see some of the other cars have advantages at different tracks, but it was definitely a Mercedes track today.
How soon does the prep work start for the 6 hour race at Spa?
Tomorrow, get right on it.
All right. Well, enjoy the victory here tonight, Michael Kondaccioglu. Really appreciate it joining us here post race. A great race today. Well judged and well earned.
Thanks so much.
And with that, we're going to head back over to Discord to complete this, and we'll be done for the afternoon. And what's final thoughts here, Ryan, on I should say the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Our first go at it, I think everything went pretty well. I don't think there was any major dramas, and the racing was rock solid. But I expect no less from this amazing group of drivers.
I tell you what, I think you're exactly right. You really didn't know what to expect with the multi-class stuff coming in. Again, a lot of drivers that had not raced with one another, especially with the GT4 class being one that folks at home can try and qualify their way into. But we saw a lot of cooperation between everybody involved, and I thought it turned into a really fun race. A few surprises along the way, including the relative struggles from GT Rivals champion Brian Heitkotter, but nevertheless, I think he's still going to be a factor in this thing down the road. And a few new names were up at the front, maybe a few stars being born here in front of our very eyes for race one of the championship.
I think so too. Next week, we're heading to Spa-Francorchamps for a 6-hour race. So make sure that you're following GT World Challenge America on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter to make sure that you get updates on when that is happening and to make sure that you can follow along in real time as it happens. Also, make sure while you're there to check out the season-long giveaways from Asus ROG, Fanatec, and FCP Euro. Sim rig with custom Asus ROG desktop, Asus ROG monitor, Fanatec wheelbase, wheel pedals, and more. All up for grabs. Make sure that you're following GT World Challenge America on those channels and social media. It's been a fun one, Ryan. Next week's Spa, but today it's over and done with. I'm at NOLA Motorsports Park for a different event, so this was a tough one for me to kind of get sorted out, but I think all things said and done went pretty well, and a week from today we'll get to do it all over again. Thanks so much for watching the FCP Euro GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. We'll see you next week. Have a good one.
Welcome to FCP Euro, your #1 online source for European car parts. Since 2001, the team here has been serving the community with hand-assembled kits, comprehensive product information, and the lifetime replacement guarantee, all packed and shipped by our distribution center team. This month is a special month here at FCP Euro, as we have the first ever Cyber Month sale going on. So head to coupons.fcpeuro.com to find the best deals of the year, and thank you for your support.
This day is gonna be the greatest memory, making history. Let's go. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it.